To the Israel-Hamas war. Hamas has said its counter-proposal to a Gaza truce plan deadline is reasonable and realistic and has agreed to negotiations to iron out disagreements. With this, concerns continue to mount over an Israeli ground invasion of southern Rafah city, home to an estimated 1.4 million displaced Palestinians. The UN is warning of a large-scale loss of lives. Well, let's talk some more about this. And joining us is the President Emeritus Corporate Council on Africa, Stephen Hayes. He joins us from Washington in the U.S. Thank you very much for joining us on World Now. Today's 7th makes it exactly 4 months since that war broke out between Israel and Hamas. And I'm curious what your stance is on the Israel-backed proposal. I don't know if you have the privilege of seeing it, also putting aside the counter-proposal by Hamas for a truce.
Well, it's interesting that Israel has reached out with a proposal, and the very basics, as I understand it, no, I haven't had the opportunity to read it, nor have many other people, but it's essentially a proposal for 40 days of ceasefire while they release the hostages. Hamas obviously has made a counter proposal, which I think has almost no chance of going very far. But the good news is at least there are negotiations. Now, how much longer it will last is anybody's guess. I think it's going to be it's a very frail stage right now. And really it depends on the next stage, I think, how Israel responds to the Hamas proposal.
Well, you've said that you think the Hamas counter-proposal has no chance of going far. So then would a middle ground be possible in this situation?
Well, that's why I think it's encouraging, at least there are some negotiations, that there seems to be room for a middle ground somewhere. And I say that only because they are listening. Now, again, I think we'll know very soon will depend on the Israeli response. Certainly, the Secretary of State for the U.S. has again put his neck on the line to make something happen. Whether he can do that or not remains to be seen.
But, Prof, you'll agree that the longer the negotiations take, the more destructions and the more lives will be lost. So what could happen at this time to restore peace to that troubled region?
Well, obviously, the longer anything goes on, the more lives are going to be lost in Israel. And they've announced, I think, yesterday that 31 of the hostages have died. Most of them supposedly immediately after the fighting began on 4 months ago, as you noted. The longer it goes, obviously, the more deaths, and the deaths are really mounting. Supposedly now there is 27,000 plus. I say supposedly because I think the number is probably much higher. Those are 27,000 known deaths on the Palestinian side. The deaths on the Israeli side, in terms of the fighting and the soldiers, are certainly growing. I think the most troubling part of this, beyond the deaths themselves, is the fact that you've got more than 1 million people now in less than 20% of the space of Gaza, with very little drinking water, no opportunities for cleanliness. Disease is growing, and starvation is beginning. So I think all that is a global demand for some humanitarian relief on that. Whether that happens or not is, again, another question. Trucks are being stopped on the Israeli border on checkpoints. So I think the big breakthrough in negotiations would be on humanitarian assistance. Now, whether Hamas would allow that under Israeli terms is doubtful. And again, it just underlines that there are really no heroes on this. No one is really taking the leadership on making humanitarian help possible.
And it's a very critical. As it stands, both sides are actually claiming to be defending their people. But then, in defense of their people, sincerity would be needed to achieve a truce. Do you see each side of this war being sincere enough to achieve peace?
I think that saying that both sides are defending their people is stretching it some. I think the Israeli response to the attack has been far greater and out of proportion to some extent. I think their goal is to basically take over Gaza. I think a number of people are saying that, including Tom Friedman, one of the great journalists on the U.S. side. That goal, Hamas has been revealed to be more a criminal organization in which a lot of the aid has gone directly to their political leadership. They've been spending the last several years building tunnels, preparing for war, as opposed to helping the people of Gaza. So I think that really this is going to be very, very difficult to find a solution to, unless it goes to a total solution at the which would mean Israeli winning or Hamas winning, and I don't see that as likely.
All right, let's see what the outcome would be, from Antony Blinken's meetings that should hold today. President Emeritus, Corporate Council on Africa, Stephen Hayes, thank you very much for talking to us on World Now.
Thank you. An honor as always.